Okay, I guess we shall be starting. So, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am Daniele Mirandi, coordinator of the Social-IST project, and on behalf of the Social-IST consortium, I'm glad to welcome you to the first European conference on tackling societal challenges with social collective intelligence and ICT. Now, a little bit of a context. This event represents the final event of the Social-IST project. And the theme of the event is social collective intelligence. By social collective intelligence, we understand the emerging area at the junction between social informatics and collective intelligence, which aims at leveraging and enhancing social processes by means of advanced and innovative information and communication technologies to tackle and solve challenging problems, building on the resources of hybrid human-machine collectives. This event serves a twofold purpose. On the one hand, as I said before, it is actually the final event of the Social-IST project, so of course we want to present you the results of the project. But at the same time, we want this event to be the start and not the end. We actually aim at making this event a milestone in the development of a strong multidisciplinary community active on the theme of social collective intelligence. In terms of agenda, we will start with three keynote speakers, and we have a number of talks organized around 3 sessions, plus 1 session devoted to the presentation of the project objectives. The agenda is quite full. As you can see, we have a number of speakers, and we actually kept the talks intentionally short in order to provide you as many perspectives as possible on this theme of social collective intelligence. We want the event to be as open and interactive as possible. Hence, I kindly please you to close your email, take a deep breath, and dive into the event. There is also let me call it technology reasons for doing so, and I will come back to it in 2 minutes. Now, at this point, I guess I should thank all the people who made this event possible. And I would like to start by acknowledging the team from Sigma Orionis, Karim Valin, Laura Denale, and Marta Arniani, who made a great job in organizing this event. I would also like to thank all the speakers, the consortium members, and the members of the scientific panel for coming here. And of course, we need to thank the European Commission, in particular our project officer, Christiane Wilczek. Last but not least, I would like to thank Scotland House, which is hosting us today. Okay, before leaving the floor to the first speaker, I need to do a bit of housekeeping. First, one of the key ingredients for a successful event is coffee, good quality coffee, usually. So the coffee breaks will be served outside, where also the lunch will be served. And if you don't have to rush to the airport at the end of the event, we will have a networking cocktail in which you can mingle and discuss with other participants. As you can see, there is a camera here. We are recording the event, and we will make the talks available on our YouTube channel. You can actually check it at Social-IST. Well, if you just browse for Social-IST, you find other things, but after a little bit you can find our project. But we are also going to webcast a live event, which means that if you have some colleagues at home who couldn't come here and attend the event but are interested in it, you can actually tell them to go to the project webpage, and they will be able to connect and see the talks live. At the same time, this means that, well, we need the bandwidth of a Wi-Fi connection for streaming live the event. So this is actually the second reason why I'm asking you not to use your laptop during the session. We have quite longish coffee breaks, so in case you need to do some email, well, take advantage of that. If you are Twitter addicted, Twitter is allowed, of course, during the session. You can use the hashtag SHE2013 and social intelligence and collective intelligence, so that we can keep track of the discussion on the web. One last recommendation is about the time limit. We are on a very tight schedule. Hence, I really please the speakers to try to stay within the time limit that they were given. We have some signs that are going to tell you when you have 5 minutes or 1 minute left, so please do your best to stay within that. And I also would like to recommend the session chairs to be German, quote unquote, in really keeping a tight control over the timing. I think I am done with it. Swiss, yes, as Roberto said, probably even better. Okay, well, not Italian. Okay, let me put it this way. I'm Italian, I can say it. Now, we are supposed to have a welcome address by Aleš Fiala, the head of unit of Future and Emerging Technologies, part of DigiConnect. Unfortunately, Alex sent us an email this morning. He woke up sick, so he couldn't make it. But we have here 2 representatives, Jose Luis Fernandez Villacañas, if I recall correctly. Well, I used to call him Pepe. And Vide Hogenhout, who are going to provide you a welcome from the FET unit. Thank you very much, and enjoy the event.
Okay, so welcome everybody. I'm a little bit surprised. I was coming here, I didn't know that Alex would fall sick. This is also why I don't have any slides, and I'm just sort of improvising a little bit, but I'll try to make the best of it. I'm happy to see you here. I'm glad to see that the project has turned into a success. I still remember when it started. Let me tell you a few things about FET, about how it used to be, and also how it is changing. FET has always been a part of the research program that does more upstream research, that looks further ahead, and in particular that looks at radical changes and unexpected things. It used to be part of the ICT program. That is no longer the case, which means we're broadening our view to look to these sort of the unexpected things that nobody was expecting all across the scientific domains. In Horizon 2020, we now have a single program. Okay, so if you look at the history of the research programs, we used to have many programs, gradually came together. We now still have, in a sense, 3. There's FP7, there's the contributions to the European Institute of Technology, and there's the CIP program. Under Horizon 2020, everything will be brought together in one program with one single set of rules, which covers everything all the way from, let's say, close to market innovation to very basic research. And in this context, there are 3 pillars. One that does industrial leadership, which looks obviously at those technologies which are really key to European industry. There's one on societal challenges, which looks at healthcare, transport, all these things. And there's one pillar on excellence in science, and FET has now become a part of that pillar called excellence in science. It's not the only part. There are 4 parts there. There's the ERC, which has become very well known for the way it contributes, it supports single investigators, and gives these sort of schemes with that scheme. There's the Mary Slodowska-Curie actions, which help researchers with their career advancement. There's research infrastructures, and then there's FET. So if you look at it in that context, apart from having sort of separated ourselves from ICT and now taking a broader view, we also get, in a sense, a bridge function, because all these things that happen in the Excellence for Science pillar need to be somehow translated to industrial leadership pillar, into the societal challenges pillar. So we're looking at how will we make that bridge. FET now consists of 3 parts. There's FET Open, FET Proactives, and FET Flagships. And as I just mentioned, we have this role of making these bridges, and I think that this topic that we're discussing here today is very interesting to FET. First of all, because it really identifies something new, something that didn't exist in the past. And apart from that, it also is a way of building this bridge, in particular towards the societal challenges pillar. So in that sense, I think it's a very timely topic. It's a very interesting topic. And I hope that you will have a lot of success in stimulating projects in this area and bringing those together. As you know, in the new programs, there is a lot of attention for these sort of topics. There's, for example, the collective awareness platforms, CAPS. There are other initiatives that have to do with bringing the social sciences closer to what we're doing in technology. Of course, there's also the work that you see in big data and all that sort of thing. So I'm very excited to see the results that have come out of this project. And I hope you'll have a very interesting day. And I'm really looking forward, well, not just to today, but what will come out of this whole movement in the coming years. So I wish you a very nice day today. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Vida. So we have now the first keynote speaker, Geoff Mulligan. Geoff is a chief executive of NESTA, the National Endowment for Society, Technology and Arts, a UK-based organization that focuses on how innovation can solve some of the country's major economic and social challenges. Before joining NESTA, Geoff was a CEO of the Young Foundation, Director of Policy under Prime Minister Tony Blair, co-founder and director of the think tank Demos, and many more. Please, Geoff.
Thanks for the invitation to be here. I really wanted to come to hear what was happening because my organisation, which acts as an investor, a funder and a researcher, is embarking on quite a bit of work in this space. I have a background partly in telecoms. I've got a PhD in telecoms, but also, as you say, running strategy in a government. And both of them have very different ways of thinking about intelligence, to put it mildly. Unfortunately, I thought I had 25 minutes, not 15, so I'm going to speak 40% faster. Apologies for that. To get through these slides, and the starting point, I think, is collective intelligence in any meaningful sense is like, you know, Mahatma Gandhi's famous comment on Western civilization. It would be a good idea, but we still don't really have any systems which could quite claim to be genuinely intelligent. And you see this again and again. I mean, we just had a week or so ago the latest IPCC findings, in some ways an extraordinary example of global societal intelligence, from sensing systems to scientific panels. But then in Copenhagen, this is what it's ended up in 2010, a bunch of men and one woman, Angela Merkel, sort of sitting around and failing to come to agreement on what the world needed to do. And the mismatch between our different systems is, I think, much more striking than the successes. So for me, the underlying question is this, you know, how do we get technologies, processes, and so on to enhance the intelligence of groups, societies, and so on? And my starting point is actually to analyse the components of recognisable intelligence which we see in individual brains, and I think provides quite a useful analytic framework for thinking about organisations, cities, societies, and so on. Everything from observation, attention, cognition, creation, memory, love, judgment, and wisdom. And they turn out to have very different logics of intelligence, but they are the things which we recognise in genuinely intelligent systems is the ability to do all of these well, but often with different tools, registers, and cultures. And so if one way to think about CI is to start with computing capacities and ask what more they can do, I'm sort of approaching it slightly differently to ask how do these different things achieve recognisably intelligent results? Problem solved, crises averted, well-being increased. So I'm going to start off very, very fast with just examples. Some of them I'm involved in, some of them I'm not, but which I think are good examples of ICT helping in address societal challenges. And these will be sort of 10 seconds each, apologies. So one set, I think, are the infrastructures. We've seen a remarkable creativity around simpler, cheaper, more accessible infrastructures. So things like Skype, but also M-Pesa, new banking infrastructure. Is that me? Who's that? Me, sorry. That's a serious sign of non-intelligence, leaving your phone on. Apologies for that. M-Pesa, which is, I think, spreading rapidly from, say, an alternative financial infrastructure to health and many other things. better matching needs with underused resources. And in hundreds and hundreds around the world of good tools for this, from collaborative consumption, things like Buzzcar or FreeCycle, or one which we've done in the UK, Bookshares, using online systems to allow the public and public library systems to share books. And we actually support the collaborative consumption platform, which brings literally hundreds of these from around the world together. Next category, better finding what's invisible. It's a really interesting field of collective intelligence. This is one from China, Baby Come Home, helping people find missing children with an online platform. And is doing something which was quite impossible before, tens of thousands of children located through this site. Or the Viennese one, Public Fruits for Everyone, which I love, the site which tells you where edible fruit trees are in Vienna, which again makes visible what's otherwise invisible. Or even better, Blind Square, using locational data to help blind people navigate a city. So again, another sort of field of intelligence. Better sensing, all sorts of things here from the Internet of Things, quantified self and so on you're familiar with. And I quite still like the Cisco planetary skin model for environmental sensing as one of the most potentially promising ways of a sort of multiple register system. Better organizing useful knowledge, very familiar field. So I liked just last week, Google launched Constitute, the online searchable world's constitutions. And one which I'm involved in, a thing called Action for Happiness, just making available scientific evidence on what makes people happy in their own lives and in schools and in workplaces. And that now has sort of use in about 130 countries and backed by the UN. Then optimizing social resources. Here, I just want to give one current example from Seoul, which is going to be a real pioneer in many of these things, particularly on collaborative consumption. This is an example from transport, where the redesign of the bus system, in this case a late-night bus system, is using mobile phone data to see what people's movements are through the city. Lots of transport tools using transport patterns. This is actually, I think, more interesting, looking at mobile phone data to see the patterns which don't accord with the transport routes. And they're using this to shift bus patterns. And also now to use, to optimize the location of public facilities, like welfare facilities and so on, using analysis through Korea Telecom, call volume data, movements, etc. So there's lots of, I think, examples of this, of optimization. Smarter learning, in some ways, is a familiar field for this. I'm actually highly skeptical of most of the MOOCs. I think 95% of MOOCs are completely ill-founded and will fail. But technology will play an enormously important role in learning all the same. And it's the hybrids, as you were saying, Daniela, which are interesting, like Digital Green in India, which is helping farmers to learn methods with a mixture of online, peer-to-peer, and video tools, or Scratch. If you're interested, we've running a program in the UK called Make Things Do Stuff with Mozilla and others, providing mainly children, but actually adults love it as well, a whole series of tools for coding, programming, making animations and websites. So it's a really good site if you want to learn these things or you have children who want to. Richer collective memory is another aspect of this, slightly less developed, but I think going to be quite interesting. Because societies have identity and belonging and memory. This is one which we're involved in for next year called History Pin, which is based around a museum, but for celebrating the 100th anniversary of the First World War, mobilizing the public's resources of stories, photographs, and other materials to create essentially a national virtual museum alongside a physical one. And I think tools of this kind will become very, very normal in the organization of memory. That's another one for culture. Safe spaces for cure is another field, not much researched, but really important. Where does online anonymity actually have advantages over offline face-to-face interaction? This is one example, the big white wall for mental health, for patients' mental health issues, providing a safe space for exploring issues, peer-to-peer advice, things like Reach Out in Australia, around suicide and teenagers, again, very good examples. But see, all of these very under-researched as to what works and why, and what mixes of online, phone, and face-to-face are most effective. Tools for innovation, oddly enough, and I come from an innovation agency, I think is still weak territory. There's been a huge proliferation of crowdsourcing and ideas platforms, very few of which work at all in any useful way. And most innovation still is much more driven by groups like this coming together and working in intensive face-to-face ways. And I would love it if anyone can show me a really good online tool for innovation. I've yet to see it. There are, though, some supports. So, again, we at Nesta have done some things, for example, on jobs innovation, creating living maps just to make available global examples of jobs innovation, analysis of why they work or don't. And these are supports, but they don't actually do the innovation themselves. And I'm a fan of Kaggle, which I think is an effective tool for crowdsourcing predictive modeling methods, but it works in a way because it is very narrowly defined and very structured use of the crowd. It is definitely not the wisdom of the crowd in the sense that we might have thought 4 or 10 years ago. Stronger accountability, a very strong message here, where I paid a bribe is probably the clearest, simplest example from India, where you simply post the story of your corrupt official. This is a great empowering tool for societies facing corrupt elites and governments. And then better social support. This is one of the fields perhaps most interest to my organisation at the moment. And this is just one example, TIES, which creates social sort of network circles of support around isolated older people. So using some of the standard tools for Facebook or whatever, but to link formal and informal support for the vulnerable. And we're backing a lot of projects in this space which seem to have the potential to be far more effective than traditional, purely professional support. Better research, Zooniverse, many of you will be familiar with citizen science projects, I won't go through that, and Patients Like Me, peer exchange, lots happening. I quite like the way Taobao in China has moved from being a sort of an eBay type system to, again, they also now do elder care exchanges in a way that eBay, I think, has been very unimaginative in using the power of its platform. So, in my final 3.5 minutes, what's missing, what's next? And here I will get perhaps a bit more provocative. I love all of these things which are happening. I think this is a field which needs research. It has to be empirical. It has to be sort of critical. But what's striking is that if you think of a sort of pyramid which takes you from data and aggregation and matching through information to knowledge, judgment, and wisdom, nearly all the examples I've shown are still very much in the lower reaches and haven't really evolved what you were describing, Daniela, of sort of hybrid systems which are clearly describable, and the combination of the human element, the institutional element, and the online element. And in some ways, this is sort of a quick diversion into theory. Any thinking about collective intelligence has to think about at least 3 orders of intelligence. So there's a first order, problem solving, analytic, cognition analysis, all that sort of stuff which you're familiar with. But then any intelligent system also has a second order capacity, the ability to reflect on goals and to create new categories for thought. Indeed, this is one of the cardinal aspects of intelligence, is the ability to reject the analytical frames you start with. And then thirdly, of course, the ability to reflect on the capacity to reflect. So all real intelligent systems have these sort of 3 loops, and which have different modes. And the problem with computing, and I know there's a lot of computer scientists in the room, is that, there isn't really time to go into this, I think there's a lot of theoretical reasons why some methods of computer logic reach limits quite quickly in relation to human and societal intelligence problems. So they work very well for physical processes and facts, less for meanings, well for distributed processes, less for concentration. You know, good for getting people on the streets, not for running a revolution, good for shopping, not for designing an economic policy, and so on. And in almost every field, we're seeing the need for new concepts of intelligence which explain the limits as well as the potential. So a 1-minute example of what I mean, maybe I don't have time for this, is health, where we've been doing a lot of work on the sort of resources globally of clinical intelligence and data and so on, some of which are organized very well in things like the Cochrane Collaboration or Patients Like Me, or in the UK an organization called NICE. I'll jump over this, is actually really interesting, but we'll have to wait for another day. And we've been trying to think through what is a health knowledge commons which can better access the best possible health information, some clinical, some experiential, some peer-to-peer, and make it available in the human context where health decisions are made, which will be the home increasingly, as well as the surgery and the hospital. And we've published a set of ideas on knowledge commons, which I think are applicable in almost every domain, but health is probably going to get there first just because it has far more data and information at its disposal. So my hypothesis is that actually getting CI to really tackle social challenges will require us to move a bit beyond dependence on traditional computing models. And I won't go through these, to understand personality, content, context, and relationships. And this, to me, is an incredibly exciting theoretical challenge as well as a technical design challenge, for which the truth is, at the moment, we lack most of the tools. We don't have adequate theory, and that's what makes this a fascinating and still very open field. Thank you.
So, thank you very much again for this inspiring talk. I think we might have time for one or two quick questions. No questions, Ralph? Yes, please.
Brilliant presentation. Thank you. How can we change in a way that will allow people to spend more time thinking? We always want to go fast, and we need time to think in a smarter way. How to get that time?
Well, I think that's a really good question, and it's clearly the vice of the connected world is clutter, urgency rather than importance, and the inability to create buffer spaces. And this is an institutional design question, a diary question, and a technological one. So if you study intelligent decision-making in any context, you find people have carved out physical spaces and time spaces for silence, effectively, and reflection. And the ones which are stupid, the busy fools, are the ones which don't do that. And at the moment, technology is the problem there, because usually you have to actually literally switch off the phones, the email, when a board or a decision-making group wants to think deeply about strategy. They have to switch the technology off. For me, one of the interesting questions is how do you actually design technologies which assist those moments of often slower, deeper reflection? And there are some very good tools helping groups to visualize their own discussions and issues and strategic processes in a slower way. But usually the pressure is clutter. Maybe if I just have 1 second, I just want to show that one thing which I skated over, which actually is quite important. And just give me 30 seconds for these slides. Because this is a new piece of work which I think has never been done in the world before, which is trying to actually study innovation adoption and essentially the implementation of knowledge in a whole system. And in this case, it is studying doctors, local doctors, and how much are they acting on proven knowledge about new health methods and what works better. And we now have data sets which mean we can study down to individual doctors' surgeries speed of adoption of new knowledge. And in a few months' time, we will be publishing this and so getting right down to the local level. It's a way of sort of bringing to the surface the knowledge system in a way I've never seen before. It's quite hard to do for other fields because they don't have the data, but in healthcare we actually do have the data. And one of the avenues, I think, for societal collective intelligence is making transparent the intelligence, as it were, the knowledge use and adoption of entities, whether it's a small firm or a doctor or a school. So I'm quite excited about this. It may be completely flawed, but that's why I just wanted to share it, because it's maybe one avenue for the future.
So let's thank again our first speaker. And we can move now to the second keynote speaker. Sorry, where was I would actually suggest, just for the sake of time, to move the questions to the coffee break that we will have later on. Sorry about that, but as I said, I'm trying to be Swiss, as Roberto suggested. So the second keynote speaker is Anna Maria Darmanin, who is a chair of a single market observatory at the European Economic and Social Committee. The European Economic and Social Committee ECCS for short, is a consultative body of the European Union established in 1958 under the Treaty of Rome. In particular, in the last years, EECS extended its mission to involve civil society in decision-making processes and in the European venture. Anna Maria has served as Vice President of ECSC for many years, where she has been active in the areas of innovation, SMEs, sustainability, and research. Please, Anna Maria.
Good morning to everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to be here with you. I realize I'm shorter than the other speakers, so okay. It is a great pleasure for me to be with you, not only because I'm very interested in this subject area, and also because the ESC has worked extensively on this, but also because I'm always very interested in putting the civil society perspective into all of this, which is what the ESC does. This is what Daniele said. We are, in a way, collective intelligence in getting civil society together, the knowledge, the experience, the intelligence on the ground of civil society, and bringing it into the decision-making process within the European Union. In recent years, we also discovered, hey, as an institution, we should be embarking on the use of ICT to better our intelligence. So in the past few years, we have been trying, through these tools which exist, to also reach out further to civil society, which is changing, even in Europe, just to bring a richer input into the decision-making process. Have we been successful? That's another thing. Our experience, and this is when I agree with the previous speaker, you have the human aspect which comes in. Our experience is you can have the most brilliant methods and tools and ICT tools to have, to gather this knowledge, to use this knowledge. But a human aspect is always the critical aspect. Having people interested in providing this intelligence. In preparing for today's conference, I always like testing things with my family, my 75-year-old mother and my nieces, ranging from 11 to 18 years old. So I sat down on Sunday lunch last Sunday and I said, okay, collective intelligence. What is your take about it? And they all looked at me saying, oh God, another thing of her discussions as usual. And then my eldest niece said, well, I presume it is when all of us put our brains together and come up with something. So, okay. I said, how do you do it in life? There goes my mother saying, oh, when we brainstorm in the community group we meet. And then my nieces started bringing up, yes, I do this through Facebook. Yes, I do this through Twitter. When I'm Skyping, okay. And I said, how can this address the societal challenges we have? And this is where all of them got stuck. Because what are our societal challenges? Poverty. We have an additional 20 million people in poverty in Europe in these last few years because of the crisis. Their main concern is some hope for a better future. Unemployment. 50% above in Spain of young people unemployed. Worse still, in these cases, we see Italy, Portugal, we see Greece, we see Spain. In these cases, these people are now beyond the radar of statistics. These young people no longer being catered for anywhere because they are neither in education, neither in training, not claiming any form of unemployment benefit because they cannot. But they aggregate somewhere. They aggregate on the net. And our challenge is actually tapping on these people, seeing what they're thinking. And that's why I say We need a better democracy by tapping on this. Other challenges, SMEs. SMEs who are closing down at the moment just because they need better instruments to be able to be competitive, and at the moment they're not competitive. So this is what ICT is, should be, will be addressing. These are the societal challenges we face. Health. So this is my challenge to you, because I know many people in this room are people who actively work on these models or are instrumental in making sure these models exist. Refocus on the real societal challenges. The human side has to be the center of what we're trying to solve through our ICT tools. Another challenge we have, and this I speak as an institution more than anything, is political involvement. Greater democracy. Next year is the European Parliament election. I don't know how many of you have been considering going to vote. I hope every single person in this room. The big challenge we have, actually, is probably fewer people than the last election will go out to vote. So how can ICT, how can collective intelligence address this? And a big challenge for us as institutions is using these tools to really understand what is happening in society. Why is there this trend towards leaving being able to go to vote or wanting to go to vote, or the laissez-faire in the political system, in our democracy? Yet again, another societal challenge, which I believe, unfortunately, some of our institutions at a member state level, but also at a European level, sometimes tend to ignore. Because it's difficult to understand. It's difficult to tap on. And this is where we need people like you to be actively working on this. So from the perspective of the ESC, we have been very much supporting the tools and really acknowledging that ICT is one of the instruments which can bring about further growth through actually the use of collective intelligence, growth amongst SMEs, better employment, better involvement, better engagement. But this always bears down on what we call the orgware, the human aspect. I would like to just pose onto you a few things for you to think about. Just a few questions, which are issues for us as the ESC. The first one is when we're speaking about collective intelligence through the tools, the information technology tools, we need to be aware that there are a number of people who either do not have the ability to pool in their intelligence. Why? They do not know how to use the tools. Let's not forget there is this category. Another category who actually does not wants to be excluded, does not want to be part of this whole system. You may say, they don't want, we can't cater for them. But this is meant to be empirical. This is meant to be using all society's intelligence. So how can we do to actually also add in this dimension? Another key challenge is the fact that the man in the street, the citizen, not always knows he is giving his intelligence, or it's being collected, or it's being analyzed. Not many read the little small print. Many will gladly put posts on, for example, Facebook, which is the most known, at least in my country, tool, but not necessarily understands the repercussions of whatever information they are giving. So another challenge and another thing which is very much important to us is not to use the usual data protection. It's not that aspect. It is a citizen truly knowing, truly acknowledging, and truly willing to give certain intelligence. And the onus of that lies on each and every one of us. I have to say I have seen great steps forward even from the side of the Commission in terms of using tools. Here I would mention specifically, you've heard about it, Future and Emerging Technologies, which the ESC has been very supportive of. But also programs such as CAPS, Collective Awareness Platforms. Both we particularly like also because there is the aspect of civil society being involved. The man in the street, the people who really matter ultimately, the ones who are providing the intelligence. And they should be in the heart of whatever research is being done. And this is why we support such programs. So, to end, because I see the cards coming up of the minutes left, and I'm seeing the 1 minute left. One of the suggestions I would put forward to you is that in whatever research you are doing, for your research to truly be successful, you need to involve the citizen. He is not only the recipient, or she, of your research, but the source of the information for your research. It's a challenge, but it's a suggestion that will make your research even more rich. Secondly, and here I see some Commission people, so I gladly put this suggestion, is that civil society is involved in any planning, evaluation of research programs targeted in this direction. I'm not a technical person, so here I just wanted to give you a few thoughts from a more civil society human aspect, a few considerations for you during this day, because I know when I saw the program, this will be a very highly rich technical program. But please, in your discussions, always refocus on the one important element, the orgware, the human. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria. We might have time for one or two questions. Yes, please, Maria.
Thank you for your talk. It's very interesting. I'm just reflecting on the kind of methodologically, it's notoriously difficult to involve citizens, and I wondered if you, particularly in your research, I wonder if you have any reflections on that or an experience of how the successful ways in which you've done that.
Without wanting to be or sound biased, because I do come from civil society, our experience is ideally always going to specific interest groups. So, for example, very active groups representing consumers, for example, interests of the environment, health, disabled people. Many of these are volunteers, but many have the passion of what they're working for and would very willingly use their networks to be able to support research. So through our experience, it is always going through the key people who have the specific interest and mobilizing their network. And most of the times, this is when it works. It is on-the-ground network, which we don't have necessarily ourselves, but through the contacts in civil society, they manage to reach to their network. So, for example, a very active network in terms of disabled people who want to be part of research and who can contribute very actively. So it's always tapping on these kind of organizations, not only at a European level, but also at a member state level. And that's where you find the people who are very enthusiastic to contribute.
Yes, please, Lois.
Point of view. Do you think that collective intelligence somehow builds and is constituted on top of the free willing of the individual to contribute to it, or is collective intelligence something that happens anyway, without or with the free will of the person to contribute, to opt into that intelligence?
Okay, interesting question, because it's what I think versus what I believe or what I value. So collective intelligence happens. It happens. It's a matter then of organizing it to get the proper value of it. However, when doing that, people should be more aware of what they are actually putting out there in terms of information. Because the credibility of your own research depends on how much people actually value it or not. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation, but you need to work on the second aspect as well. So people being aware of that and knowing that they are contributing to having this collective intelligence. I hope I understand. I answered your question. My value is every individual needs to know what he's contributing. And here I see a few people who smile because they know what I think in this respect.
Okay, let's thank again Marianne.
Thank you.
And we can move now to the third keynote, which will be given by Roberto Saracco. Roberto is currently the director of EIT ICT Labs Italy, which is the Italian node of ICT Labs, the largest European initiative on innovation and information and communication technologies. Before that, he was director of the Future Center in Venice, a research center by Telecom Italia, focusing on the economic impacts of innovation in the telco sector. And even before that, he was director of long-term research at Telecom Italia. Please let's welcome Roberto.
It just showed that I'm pretty old, does it? Well,
Experienced.
yeah, we call it experience, but it's just a nice way of saying it in a different way, unfortunately. Okay, well, thanks for having me here. I really appreciate it. Let me start by saying that we've got plenty of technology for awareness, and I think this was mentioned by the other speakers, because first thing you need to be aware. But it's not just being aware as a single individual, it's also being aware in the space, the overall space. And what I think is interesting in this picture is the fact that Cisco is forecasting 50 billion things that will be connected to the network by the end of this decade. Actually, HP is forecasting 1,000 billion. How is it that there's such a widespread in this forecasting? Well, you can explain that by looking that Cisco is basically thinking about a thing is connected, so I count the thing as one connected, as it's really connected through a wire or a wireless thing to the network. Whilst in the HP case, they are saying, oh, no, no, no. A thing is connecting as long as it connects to its small environment. So if you have something that connects to something that is there, it's a thing that is connected. And after a little bit of hops, then it connects to the big network. And I think that this interpretation is actually the right one when we're talking about awareness, space awareness, and people awareness. And the social collective intelligence is not about the fact that I send a tweet and my tweet goes over broadcasting all over the world, okay? Because actually it does not. What happened to my tweet is that it reaches some specific person. It's just it shrunk the geographical distance. But connectiveness, awareness, is about the fact that it happens today that I'm talking to you, okay? I'm not talking to someone else. But then something that I'm saying is going to be reported by you to someone else and so on. And so it generates ripple and spreads. So even from a technological point of view, I think we have to look at the HP thing. And then since my focus is on smart city today, well, what is a smart city? Well, if you ask a major, is your city going to be a stupid city or a smart one? You might expect he will tell you it's going to be a smart city, okay? But every single person you're talking with will tell you a different story about being smart, what they mean with smart. And actually, I think that is a set of things. It's a set of things that involves infrastructures, it involves things, it involves how you buy things, how you connect, how you communicate. It involves the collective intelligence, how you feel about it, okay? And if I'm looking at the connectivity structure, what I see is that also at the technical level, we are seeing an evolution toward some sort of general fabric. We are no longer going to see better infrastructures for communication. We are going to see fabric of communication. So today we have flat networks, but these are evolving, and communities are building up their own little networks that connects. Here we have a Wi-Fi network, but in walking the street you will find other Wi-Fi network. And in the future you will have cars that will provide their own little area, their own little halo network. And this halo will connect one another. So this will generate things. And through software-defined networks, you're going to have the possibility of harvesting all communication resources available in an environment or available in the network. And actually, we are seeing an evolution in understanding the idea of software-defined network that used to be, I'm a big telco operator, I'm going to use software-defined network so I can manage better my resources. Nowadays, it's more and more, well, there's plenty of resources out there, like your cell phones, and this cell phone may decide how to communicate one another. And this creates a software-defined network at the edges. It's a completely different thing. Again, it's about the collectivity. It's a sort of intelligence around. And information is more and more at the edges, and we are seeing that. SoftBank in Japan, they are giving their customer a little hard disk so that they can download movies. And they provide it for free with the provision that everybody's accepting to let them pick up the information on their hard disk and to move it to someone else's hard disk. It doesn't make any problem of privacy because there are only movies that they are downloading from the network. So they download another one to your neighbor, I just pick up the information there and transfer to the other. So we are seeing that. And this is bringing us to the area of ambient interconnection. And I think that this connects in a way, as you can see here, to the fact that the way we're structuring our world and the way we're living our world is more and more connected, and it's a fuzzy boundary. That was the island of Singapore, and you saw it shrunk and get larger and so on. Why is that? Well, if you're measuring the distance between 2 points, not in terms of kilometers, but in terms of time it takes to move from one point to another, then if you are in peak hour and you're using the car, the island gets bigger. And if you are in nighttime, it gets smaller. But if you're using public transportation, well, during peak hours, the island is smaller, okay, because you got a lot of public transportation. But in nighttime, it gets bigger because there's less. So this is also providing you in a visual way the interaction that may happen between infrastructure and our way of living. And of course, our city are creating data, huge amount of data. And we have been talking about the information society for many years now. But actually what we have been doing all these years is to increase the amount of data that we can generate, okay? We are not really leveraging out of this data. Yes, there are plenty of applications that show something like that, but we are still very far because we are still very far from the peak of the pyramid that they showed before, okay? We are still at the lower layer, okay? And I think this is going to change in the future, but it requires a lot of research. We are really just begun. And when I'm going on the I Feel Fine, We Feel Fine, on the internet, you know, this is the website that collects the last 20 minutes of information, of data over the internet. And go over the site, it's wonderful to play with it. And you've got all this bubble floating around, you click on one, and you get a message that corresponds to that particular bubble, okay? So it's like to look into a keyhole and see what's happening there. And some of these bubbles relate, of course, to pictures, not just to information or something like that. So you get an overall view, and then you have the possibility of filtering. And you say, hey, wait a moment, I don't want to see it all. I just want to see messages, pictures that refers to people that are happy. And then you filter, okay? And then you say, hey, but I want to see people that are happy in Brussels or around the Schumann place, okay? And then you filter and you shrunk. And ads people, the advertiser world, have started to use this kind of thing. Because, of course, they launch an ad and they see how it feels after that. What are people tweeting about? Did they have an impact on that? What are they blogging about? And so on. So this is just an example of how to manage from the richness of information that we are generating. But it's much more, I think. We cannot just sit and observe. We have to measure. And I think that we are measuring too little, frankly. Okay, we need metrics. In the area of smart cities, as an example, I've seen a lot of plans. I want to have a bigger infrastructure for the city, or I want to manage the traffic better, I want to have less pollution, something like that. But what are we talking about in terms of quantitative terms? Let's measure it. And if you're starting to measure, the first thing you're doing, okay, let's see the metrics and how do you apply to this particular situation. And let's see what's happening now. And let's see if my plan is going to better this kind of thing. What are the metrics, what are the quantities that I expect to have in 10 years' time? And over the time, I'm going to measure it. And then you see exactly how it happens. And then you have to insert all this kind of thing in a more general context, okay? Now, one interesting statistic that came out in Italy is how smart is a city. And they use a metric for doing this kind of thing. And then I say, okay, let me try to compare this ranking with another ranking that was performed by different people about how happy are people in various cities. And what you discover is there's not a clear correlation between happiness and smartness of a city. Now, do we really want to have a smart city, or we want to have a city where people are happier? Okay? And this is very difficult to relate, you know. I spent my vacation, it was great, by the way, in Seychelles Island. Okay? And they moved toward the smart Seychelles, I noticed. Because if you go there on the website, you'll discover the timetable, the schedule for buses. And they are very great. You see all the timetable. Then you go to the bus stop, and the bus doesn't come. And you ask, well, what's happening? It was supposed to be. You ask the local, okay? You say, oh, but the bus will come. You're real, enjoy the weather. It's nice weather. Why do you worry about the bus, okay? So my perception of smartness and ICT was completely different from the perception of that. And they were happy. I was hungry because the bus was not coming, okay? So it's a lot about expectation and what you're dealing with and something like that. Well, let me close with the two initiatives that I'm involved with. One is the IEEE Urbanization Challenge, where we are trying to work together with cities around the world. We're starting the pilot in Guadalajara in Mexico. And we are flanking them, their initiatives, they're already running initiatives, by providing some technological support in a neutral way. And we understand that in order to make this happen, technology is just a little piece of the whole story. You need the economic aspect to be considered. You need the regulation to take charge. And you need to consider the environment, how people are living, okay? And Guadalajara is a nice example because they want to change the central part of the city that faded away over time. They want to revamp it. And they're trying to bring in innovative companies there. But they don't want to create a tech ghetto, okay, with all this innovation. What they want to have is a lively place where people can live 24 hours a day, drinking, cerveza or whatever, tequila, what they have. And so their problem is a global problem. It's not just to say, okay, let's make a better building, let's put Internet of Things there, let's attract companies and something like that. Let's create a place where people really want to live, okay? And this is something interesting and challenging, and we're following that. Then on the ICT Lab side, we have an area that is called the Digital City. And we are working in many aspects of the digital city. But as you see from the names of the project that will be running next year, the focus is really on citizens, okay? Is what the citizen can do to create a smarter city. So it's not to throw ICT inside the city so that it's better for the people, but actually it's the other way around, I would say, okay? How can people use things so that they perceive they are feeling to live in a better city? And in Italy, in Trento in particular, we have started to work on this kind of thing by trying to get all the data that are coming from the municipalities, from the highway, from the postal service, from cars, from security cameras, and so on, and bringing in all this data. Now, this has been possible because the administration, the institution in Trento, set up together with the University of Trento. By the way, I see a guy down there that is the guiding orchestra leader, that have set up a framework, the open data framework, where this is possible. And without this kind of open data framework sustained and published by the administration, it would have been impossible to get this kind of data because of concern of privacy, because of all these things. You say, hey, yes, this would be nice, but then people are scared. What are you going to do with that? Okay, so there's a lot of scare about that. And with this, I would like to close because I think that whenever we're trying to do something, we have to consider both faces of the coin, okay? And as they say, whoever invented the ship also invented shipwreck and castaway, okay? Now, most of the time, researchers are so excited about what they are doing, okay? They feel so good about what they are doing, they are always presented the nice part of the story. Whilst I think there's also the other side of the story. And if you really want to achieve a collective intelligence, people need to understand what's going on in a global sense. Not just present one side of the story, present both of them. Thank you very much.
So we have time for a couple of questions. Yes, please, yeah.
This is a question really about mayors. So I have to go to a gathering of mayors next week, and I often see mayors saying, smart cities sounds wonderful, may not make people happy. What should I believe, and how should I know what I should believe? They are bombarded with marketing from many of the companies you mentioned. Is there yet any source of evidence of sort of smartness about smart cities?
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a quite difficult question. I think that in general, and this is something, by the way, that we are trying to do at the ICT labs, is not a matter of trusting something, but learning how to interface with information in general. And education is a crucial part. I think that most of the people are just being bombarded, and who shouts louder gets the floor, basically. Okay, so this is the situation if you're looking at the overall population. There are tools nowadays that allow to have also tiny voices being heard, and but I still think that we're living in a world where who shouts louder gets the floor, unfortunately. It's not nice, but...
This is not a question, this is an example of a smart city that I would like to offer to your question. We have a very good example in Gaziantep municipality, Turkey, coming from the Society for Organizational Learning. So there is such an example. And the respective presentation has been provided by me a few years ago before the Smart Cities project started. You can find it in the internet.
Time for another question? If not, I actually have one, because thanks. One of the things that you highlighted, Roberto, is this kind of shift that has been happening in the last couple of years in smart city projects. Initially, people were really focusing on the technological infrastructure, kind of equipping the city with sensors, with communication networks, with computing, and so on and so forth. And right now, we are kind of shifting towards a more citizen-centric perspective. Yet, most smart city projects take this kind of top-down approach, whereas this kind of, well, I would call them early stage social collective intelligence examples that Gov provided in his talk are mostly bottom-up initiatives, coming out from groups of people who have a concrete interest into something, some real problems. So do you think that the two worlds will kind of meet or collapse or crash or something?
I would actually think that these two worlds are happening because on one side you have a general trend of better infrastructure, communication infrastructure, And this in turn makes it possible to have other kind of tools stemming bottom up to exploit this kind of infrastructure. At the same time, all these tools that are coming up are somewhat stimulating the big operators and other constituencies to deploy more infrastructure because there's more use for them. So actually I see them coming up in parallel, and more, I see it as a synergistic thing happening.
Okay,
It's
so
not by
let's
chance.
again, Roberto.